Welcome everybody to our evening meditation as we move into the month of October. And we're at the end now of the season of creation. So just some final thoughts on that and some words in this meditation from Barbara Holmes, who's a colleague of Father Richard Raw, and thinking also about stillness and about times of crisis. Barbara Holmes says that when we encounter crisis, we plunge into a space of stillness and unknowing, a shared interior of spiritual rebirthing, or the potential at least for spiritual rebirthing. Thinking particularly of the climate crisis, she asks, will we rise to the occasion and allow the planet to recover from our toxic greed? Or will we continue to destroy it, our only home? A crisis forces those caught in its clutches to come to terms with the fact that life as we knew it may never be the same. And so as we come to our time of stillness and centering ourselves, I invite you to find a comfortable position, to become aware of your contacts with the chair, with the ground, to be alert, to lower your gaze, soften your gaze, or if it helps, to close your eyes. And as usual, to bring our focus to the breath and to take 2 deep cleansing breaths. Breathing in slowly through the nose and slowly out through the mouth. Focusing on the sound of the breath, on the sensation of that in-breath, noticing the lungs filling, the stomach rising. And consciously and deliberately breathing more slowly and more deeply. Maybe even reinforcing that by saying to yourself, this is an in-breath, and this is an out-breath. And then overlaying that with some idea of breathing in relaxation and breathing out tension. Using the in-breath to reinforce the idea of relaxation, and the out-breath as a way of letting go, of releasing tension. Breathing into any areas that you can perceive as being a bit tense. Whether that's in the stomach, perhaps some emotion there, or in the shoulders, if you've been hunched over the computer like I have, maybe even behind the eyes. Gently scan the body and any areas of tension. Breathe intentionally into those places. And as you continue with that slow, deliberate breathing, perhaps notice a sense of your own stillness. I think that's a more meaningful word than silence, because even though we try, it's probably difficult to achieve total silence. There is some sound wherever we are. But finding our own stillness. Going deeper within to our still center. Perhaps using an image that we've used before of being in the depths of the ocean, where the day-to-day issues are the waves on the surface and we're at the still center, down well below those waves. Maybe there's even a sense of restoration and renewal that comes with that awareness of our stillness, our still center. Barbara Holmes talks of crisis and crisis management. With the climate, I think we have the challenge of finding a course between doing nothing because we're in denial, thinking there's no crisis, and doing nothing because we have a sense of doom, that there's nothing to be done. And perhaps the first thing to do is to see crisis contemplation becoming a place of refuge. When things around us are beyond our control, finding a space of solitude and refuge that allows us to begin to gather ourselves again. So a space of solitude and refuge. But then she talks of this becoming a wellspring of discernment. Be still and know that I am God. Perhaps from that stillness, a discernment may emerge. A discernment perhaps that all things draw from the same wellspring of spiritual energy, that there is no division between what some call sacred and some call secular. that this boundary is actually artificial. And that the sacred can be discerned in so many ways and so many places. Everything is sacred, Richard Rohr tells us. It is only we that de-sacred it, desecrate. Coming back to that idea of stillness. Listening to a Quaker recently talking about a book she's written on Quaker spirituality, deriving from the original works of George Fox and Mary Fell. She says she agrees that silence is difficult to attain, so we need to look deeper for that stillness at our centre. So I invite you to again bring your attention back to the breath. Recenter yourself. And this time, rather than scanning the body for points of physical tension, just scan and become aware of any thoughts. And in becoming aware, able to step back from them. Becoming your own observer. Going down into that ocean depth, perhaps. Finding your still centre. And try to cultivate an awareness of what that feels like, so that it becomes a welcome, safe space that you can go to when you need to. Some final thoughts from another spiritual teacher, Paula Darcy, who talks about contemplative observation of nature, appropriate for our season of creation. This idea of all being connected. She says, I rest and notice the trees rising out of the water. I look into the water and see how the trees have bonded with the algae and the plant life. Aren't I out here to learn how to bond to God? Nature bonds, but it does not cling. I look at the river. If I were to cling to it, I'd have to pick it up in a bucket and take some of it with me. I'd separate it from itself. If I were to cling to a tree, I'd have to break a part of it off or uproot it. Maybe when I cling to people, I dim them too. I separate them from their own inner roots. I help them to believe they are dependent on me. I convince us both. And then we never hear the cry of hunger, which is really for God. Until this moment, I have not understood that. I am hungry for God. And now, as I am eating and drinking or taking in God's creation, I feel satisfied. I'm letting myself live in its beauty without needing to own it or control it or secure it for tomorrow. I am present to this moment, and that brings joy. And so we'll move to our silence with some music that echoes those thoughts. This is Salt of the Sound. Beyond the noise surrounding, in your arms I found my home. I fall into the silence, let it overflow.
Beyond the noise surrounding, in your arms I found my home. I fall into the silence, let it
I fall into the silence, let it overflow. So we move to our silence, letting it overflow, moving to our still center, either through the breathing, through observing our thoughts and letting them go, or following the mantra of the music. I fall into the silence, let it overflow. resting in your presence. This space between is where I'm known. So we emerge from our silence. This space between is where I'm known. Perhaps taking a deeper breath again. Perhaps gently opening your eyes if they've been closed. That's just looking at your hands and stretching the fingers. Just bidding a temporary farewell to our still centre. And a closing word back to Barbara Holmes from Crisis Contemplation. For the crises, the disruption of order, and the plunge into contemplation, we are grateful. For the welcoming darkness and the wounds that bring us into a place of unknowing, we thank God. For the nurture of our many villages of belonging, we are grateful. For healing that comes in unexpected ways, thanks be. Amen.